The massive Imperial dreadnought Eternal Dominion cut through the darkness of space like a blade through silk. Its hull stretched for miles, covered in weapon ports that could turn planets to ash. Admiral Zexathera stood on the bridge, his forearms folded behind his back as he watched the tactical display. His pale blue skin rippled with satisfaction. Another primitive species would soon learn to bow before the might of the Galactic Empire. "Admiral," his communications officer called out, her voice carrying the usual mix of fear and respect that all Imperial personnel showed their superiors. "We have detected several small vessels ahead. They appear to be from the third planet of this system." Zexthera's mandibles clicked together in what his species considered a smile. "Humans," he said, tasting the word like something bitter. "I have read the reports. A young species that has barely left their home world. They should prove amusing before we add their system to the Empire." The tactical officer looked up from his station. "Sir, the human ships are tiny. Our smallest fighter craft are larger than their biggest vessel. There are only 5 of them." "Perfect," Zexathara replied. "Open a channel. Let us give them the standard offer. Submit or die. Most species choose submission once they see our ships." The communications officer worked at her controls. "Channel open, Admiral." Zexathera straightened to his full 8-foot height. His voice boomed across the void between the ships. "Primitive humans of the third planet. I am Admiral Zexathera of the Galactic Empire. Your species has been selected for integration into our glorious civilization. You will surrender your ships and prepare for occupation. Resist and your world will burn. You have 1 of your minutes to respond." The bridge fell silent. This was always Zexathera's favorite moment. The pause before primitive species realized how helpless they were. Sometimes they begged. Sometimes they threatened. Sometimes they tried to run. But they always showed fear. The silence stretched on. Then something unexpected happened. Laughter. Not the bitter laugh of desperation or the mad cackle of a broken mind. This was genuine, warm laughter. The kind of sound someone made when they heard a really good joke. The communications officer looked confused. "Sir, the humans are laughing?" More voices joined in. The laughter grew louder, spreading from one human ship to another. It was infectious and cheerful, like friends sharing a funny story at a party. "Perhaps they do not understand," Zexathara said, though doubt crept into his voice. "Translate our message into their primitive language." "Already done, sir." The translation was perfect. A new voice came over the communication channel. It was female, speaking in the human language called English. Her tone was casual and friendly. "Oh wow, that was great. Did you guys hear that? Glorious civilization and your world will burn." Classic stuff. The woman paused and they could hear her talking to someone else. "Hey Marcus, you owe me 20 credits. I told you they'd use the burn your world line." Another human voice, male this time, responded in the background. "Damn it, Sarah, you're right. They always go with the world-burning threat." The woman's voice came back clearly over the channel. "Sorry about that. I'm Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Defiance. You must be having a really bad day if you're trying to threaten us with those old rust buckets." Zexathera's 4 eyes widened. "Old rust buckets?" His ship was the pride of the Imperial fleet. It had conquered hundreds of worlds. "Yeah," Captain Chen continued, her voice still cheerful. "I mean, don't get me wrong, they're pretty big. Very impressive. But are you seriously trying to intimidate us with fusion reactors and particle beam weapons? What's next, going to threaten us with gunpowder?" The bridge crew of the Eternal Dominion exchanged confused looks. Particle beam weapons were the height of Imperial technology. They could slice through moon-sized asteroids. "Perhaps," Zexathera said slowly, "you do not understand what you face. This ship alone carries enough firepower to destroy your entire planet." The laughter started again, even louder this time. Multiple human voices joined in, and it sounded like they were having the time of their lives. "Oh my God," Captain Chen gasped between laughs. "Elena, are you getting this? They think they can destroy Earth with particle beams. That's like threatening to sink an aircraft carrier with a water balloon." Another human voice, this one with a slight accent, replied from somewhere on the human ship. "I'm recording everything, Sarah. The Science Council is going to love this. First contact with a species still using linear energy projection. It's like finding people who think the world is flat." Zexathera felt something he had never experienced in 300 years of conquest. Confusion. These humans were not afraid. They were not even taking him seriously. They were laughing at him. "You dare mock the Galactic Empire?" he demanded. "Mock? Oh no, no, no. Captain Chen said, though her voice still bubbled with amusement. We're not mocking you. We're just surprised. It's like meeting someone who's really excited to show you their stick and stone tools when you've got molecular assemblers in your pocket. The tactical officer leaned over to whisper to Zexathera. Sir, our sensors show that their ships have no weapons at all. No armor plating. No shields that we can detect. They appear to be completely defenseless. This should have been reassuring, but somehow it made Zexathera more nervous. Why would defenseless ships laugh at the Imperial fleet? Captain Chen, he said, trying to regain control of the situation. I will give you one more chance. Surrender now or face the consequences. Consequences? Chen's voice was full of delight. Oh, this keeps getting better. Tell you what, Admiral. Sorry, what was your name again? Admiral Zexathera, Supreme Commander of the 7th Imperial Fleet. Right, Zex. Can I call you Zex? Great. Listen, Zex, I've got an idea. Why don't you show us these consequences you're talking about? Give us your best shot. We promise not to laugh too hard. The bridge fell dead silent. In all his years of conquest, no species had ever asked to be attacked. You want us to fire on your ship? Zexathera asked. Sure. We're curious to see what you got. Fair warning, though, you might want to start with something small. We don't want you to embarrass yourselves right off the bat. Zexathera looked around his bridge. His crew stared back at him with expressions of complete bewilderment. This was not how first contact was supposed to go. Species were supposed to fear the Empire, not treat them like an entertaining sideshow. But he was an admiral of the Galactic Empire. He had his pride. Very well, he said coldly. You have asked for this. Do not blame us for what happens next. The laughter from the human ships grew even louder. It echoed through the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, like the sound of children playing. But there was something about it that made Zexathera's skin crawl. It was the laughter of someone who knew a secret. Someone who was completely, utterly confident. Someone who had absolutely nothing to fear. As he gave the order to charge weapons, Admiral Zexathera had the uncomfortable feeling that he was about to learn why the humans were laughing. And he suspected he was not going to like the lesson. The weapons officer of the Eternal Dominion looked up at Admiral Zexathera with wide, uncertain eyes. Sir, all particle beam arrays are charged and ready. Target locked on the human vessel. Zexathera nodded grimly. This would teach these arrogant humans to mock the Galactic Empire. Fire a warning shot. Something that will damage their ship, but not destroy it completely. I want them to understand what they are facing. Yes, sir. Firing warning shot. A brilliant blue beam lanced out from the Imperial dreadnought. It was beautiful and terrible. A focused stream of energy that could melt through 6 feet of solid titanium in seconds. The beam struck the human ship called Defiance directly on its hull. Zexathera expected to see hull plating vaporize. He expected emergency lights and atmosphere bleeding into space. He expected panic and desperate surrender calls. Instead, the beam simply stopped. It hit the human ship and dispersed harmlessly like water hitting a rock. The Defiance did not even shake from the impact. The bridge of the Eternal Dominion fell silent except for the low hum of electronics. Then the laughter started again. Oh my God, Marcus, did you see that? Captain Chen's voice came through the communication channel, bright with genuine joy. That was adorable. Look, they're trying to hurt us with concentrated photons. It's like being attacked by a really angry flashlight. The male voice from before Marcus responded with equal amusement. Elena's going to want a full analysis of this. I'm pretty sure they're still using matter-energy conversion for power. When's the last time anyone used fusion reactors for anything serious? I don't know, Chen replied. Maybe back when we thought faster-than-light travel was impossible? This is like meeting cave painters who think they've invented art. Zexathera felt his stomach drop. The most powerful weapon in the Imperial arsenal had done absolutely nothing to the human ship, not even a scratch on their hull. Weapons officer, he said quietly. Increase power to maximum. Hit them with everything we have. The weapons officer's claws trembled as he worked his controls. Sir, that level of power could destroy a small moon. Do it. Every particle beam cannon on the Eternal Dominion swiveled toward the human ship. The air on the bridge crackled with electrical discharge as massive amounts of energy built up in the weapon systems. Warning lights flashed as the ship's reactors pushed beyond their normal limits. Firing full barrage, the weapons officer announced. A dozen beams of concentrated destruction lanced out toward the Defiance. The space between the ships lit up like a small star. As enough energy to glass a planet's surface struck the tiny human vessel. The beams hit the ship and scattered like raindrops hitting a windshield. Not a single photon of energy made it through whatever was protecting the human vessel. The laughter from the human ships grew so loud that the communications officer had to turn down the volume. Oh wow. They really went all out that time. Chen's voice was delighted. Thanks for the light show, guys. That was actually pretty spectacular. Very dramatic. You must have put a lot of work into making those beams look so impressive. Another human voice joined the conversation. This one was female with a different accent. Sarah, I'm reading massive energy discharge from their reactors. They just used enough power to run a small city for a year. Their efficiency ratios are terrible. Yeah, Elena, but you have to appreciate the effort, Chen replied. It's not their fault they're working with Stone Age technology. Remember when we used to think nuclear weapons were scary? Zexathara's forearm shook with rage and confusion. This is impossible. No ship can withstand that level of firepower. No shield technology exists that can disperse pure energy without any feedback or drain. His science officer, a thin creature with green skin and too many eyes, looked up from his instruments. Admiral, I'm not detecting any energy shields at all around their ships. No force fields, no particle screens, no electromagnetic barriers. According to our sensors, our weapons should have gone straight through their hulls. Then why didn't they? I don't know, sir. Our instruments say the weapons hit something, but they can't identify what. It's like the energy just stopped existing. More human ships began appearing on the edge of sensor range. They popped into existence without any visible means of travel. No jump drives, no warp fields, no tears in space-time. They were simply not there one moment and there the next. Oh good, Chen's voice came over the comm. The cavalry's arriving. Hey everyone, you missed the opening act, but don't worry. I think our new friends here are just getting warmed up. The new human ships immediately began broadcasting their own laughter and comments. Did they really try particle beams? That's hilarious. Look at the size of that thing. It's like they're compensating for something. Are those actual chemical rockets for propulsion? Do they know about gravity manipulation yet? Zexathara watched his tactical display as more and more human ships appeared. They were all small, seemingly unarmed, and according to his sensors, completely impossible. They showed no energy signatures his instruments could recognize. No propulsion systems, no power sources. It was as if they were not really there at all. Admiral, his communications officer said nervously, the human captain is hailing us again. Put her through, Zexathara said weakly. Hey Zex. Chen's voice was as cheerful as ever. Thanks for the demonstration. That was really entertaining. But I'm starting to feel bad about this. It's like watching someone try to fight a tank with a wooden sword. Why don't you call for backup? Maybe if you get enough ships together, you might actually manage to be mildly annoying. The insult hit Zexathara harder than any weapon could have. The Galactic Empire was not mildly annoying. The Empire was the most powerful force in the galaxy. They had conquered thousands of worlds, enslaved entire species, and built a civilization that spanned half the known universe. And this human was talking to him like he was a child playing with toys. You think this is amusing? He snarled into the comm. I have an entire fleet at my command. Ships that have turned civilizations to dust. Oh, we're sure you do. Chen replied, her tone gentle and understanding, like someone talking to a small child having a tantrum. And I bet those civilizations were very impressed by your particle beams and fusion reactors. It's not your fault that you haven't figured out how physics actually works yet. How physics works, Zexathara repeated. Yeah, you're still thinking in terms of matter and energy, aren't you? That's cute, like watching someone try to build a computer with wooden gears. The science officer leaned over to whisper to Zexathara. Sir, I'm detecting massive distortions in local spacetime around their ships. Whatever technology they're using, it's operating on principles our science cannot explain. Zexathara stared at the tactical display. 20 human ships now hung in space before his massive dreadnought. They were laughing at him, actually laughing at the most powerful military force in galactic history, and the worst part was he was beginning to suspect they had good reason to laugh. Communications, he said quietly. Send a message to Imperial Command. Tell them we need reinforcements. How many ships, sir? Zexathara looked at the tiny human vessels that had just shrugged off enough firepower to destroy planets. All of them, he whispered. Send all of them. 3 hours later, space around the Sol system looked like a military parade. Imperial ships continued to arrive through jump gates, their massive hulls blotting out the stars. Dreadnoughts the size of cities, battlecruisers that could crack moons, carrier vessels launching swarms of fighter craft. Admiral Zexathara had called for reinforcements, and the Empire had responded with overwhelming force. 200 Imperial warships now faced 30 human vessels. The humans were still laughing. Oh wow, they brought friends. Captain Chen's voice carried across the fleet channels. This is like the universe's most expensive comedy show. Marcus, are you getting pictures of all this? Every angle, Marcus replied from somewhere on the Defiance. The folks back home are never going to believe this. Look at that big one in the center. It's got to be 20 miles long. Compensation, another human voice chimed in from a different ship. Definitely compensation. Admiral Zexathara stood on his bridge surrounded by holographic displays showing the positions of his fleet. Every ship was armed and ready. Every captain was awaiting his orders. This was the largest concentration of Imperial firepower ever assembled in one place. And he was terrified. Admiral. Fleet Commander Takvar's voice came through the communication system. Takvar commanded the super dreadnought Universe's End, a ship so large it had its own weather systems. My sensors show no change in the human vessels. They still appear to be completely unarmed and unshielded. That's what our sensors showed before we attacked them, Zexathara replied grimly. Our most powerful weapons did nothing. Less than nothing. They bounced off like we were throwing pebbles at a mountain. Impossible. No species has that level of technology. Tell that to the humans. On the bridge of the Defiance, Dr. Elena Vasquez was having the time of her life. As the ship's lead scientist, she had dreamed of first contact with alien species her entire career. She had imagined peaceful exchanges of knowledge, careful diplomatic protocols, and gradual cultural understanding. She had never imagined anything this entertaining. Sarah, she called to Captain Chen, who was lounging in her command chair like she was watching a movie. I'm getting some fascinating readings from their ships. Their technology is almost exactly like ours was about 4,000 years ago. Really? Chen looked interested. That recently? Well, give or take a few centuries. They're using linear energy projection, matter-based computing, and what looks like controlled nuclear fusion for power. It's like finding a perfectly preserved museum of early human space travel. Dr. James Park, the ship's physicist, looked up from his instruments. The really interesting part is their ships. They're actually quite well designed for their technology level. Efficient use of materials, good structural engineering. They're not stupid, just limited. Limited how? Chen asked. They're still thinking in 3 dimensions, Park explained. All their weapons, all their defenses, everything assumes that matter and energy work the way they appear to work. They haven't figured out that reality is more like a suggestion than a rule. Chen nodded thoughtfully. That explains why they can't hurt us. Our ships aren't really here in the way they understand here. We're existing in a slightly different interpretation of physics. Exactly. To them, we're like ghosts that can laugh. The communication system crackled to life. Human ships, came a new voice, deeper and more commanding than Admiral Zexathara's. This is Fleet Commander Takvar of the Imperial Super Dreadnought Universe's End. You are surrounded by the combined might of the Galactic Empire. Surrender immediately, or we will demonstrate the full extent of our power. The human ships fell silent for a moment. Then someone on one of the other vessels started laughing so hard they could barely speak. Did he just say his ship is called Universe's End? The voice gasped between fits of laughter. Oh my God, that's the most pretentious name I've ever heard. What's next? The Galaxy Destroyer? The Reality Killer? Actually, Dr. Vasquez said, consulting her instruments, their naming conventions are quite interesting from an anthropological perspective. They seem to favor intimidating titles that project power and dominance. It's a classic sign of a civilization still in its aggressive expansion phase. The aggressive expansion phase, Chen mused. We went through that too, didn't we? Right around the time we discovered fusion power and thought we were masters of the universe. Pretty much exactly, Dr. Vasquez confirmed. The psychological profiles are nearly identical. Overwhelming confidence based on limited technological achievement, assumption that bigger weapons equal superiority, and a complete inability to imagine that other species might have moved beyond their current paradigm. Commander Takvar's voice came through the comm again, sounding irritated. You will not ignore the Empire. We have enough firepower here to sterilize every planet in your system. Oh, I'm sorry, Chen replied, her voice taking on the tone someone might use with an upset child. We weren't ignoring you. We were just discussing how cute your ships are. All those weapons and armor plating and dramatic names. It's like watching kids play war games in the backyard. The Imperial comm channel went silent for several long seconds. Did she just call our fleet cute? Someone whispered on the Imperial side. Dr. Park was studying the readings from the Imperial ships with growing fascination. Sarah, you need to see this. Their weapons aren't just primitive, they're hilariously inefficient. Look at these energy conversion ratios. He put the data up on the main screen. The numbers showed how the Imperial ships converted matter to energy for their weapon systems. They're losing 98% of their input energy to waste heat and radiation. Park continued. It's like trying to light a candle by setting fire to a forest. And their targeting systems, Dr. Vasquez added, are purely optical and electromagnetic. They're literally trying to shoot at us with enhanced eyesight. They can't even detect that we're not entirely in their dimension. Chen shook her head in amazement. It's like watching someone try to swat a hologram with a fly swatter. The tactical officer on Chen's bridge, Lieutenant Rodriguez, looked up from his station. Captain, I'm detecting massive energy buildups across the Imperial fleet. Looks like they're charging every weapon they have. All of them at once? Chen asked. Yes, ma'am. If I'm reading this correctly, they're about to hit us with enough firepower to crack a planet. Chen considered this for a moment. Well, that should be impressive. Everyone ready to enjoy the show? The crew of the Defiance settled back in their chairs like people getting comfortable for a fireworks display. Across the human fleet, similar preparations were taking place. Someone started taking bets on how pretty the light show would be. Fleet Commander Takvar's voice boomed across space one final time. You have made your choice, humans. Face the consequences of your arrogance. All ships fire everything. 200 Imperial warships opened fire simultaneously. The space between the fleets lit up like a newborn star as enough destructive energy to reshape solar systems lanced toward the tiny human vessels. The humans watched with the kind of delighted attention people usually reserved for spectacular sunsets, and then something impossible happened. The energy beams, the particle streams, the quantum torpedoes, and the gravity bombs all struck the human ships and simply stopped. Not deflected, not absorbed, not redirected. They hit something and ceased to exist, as if reality itself had decided that the attack was not allowed to happen. The light show faded, leaving 30 human ships floating serenely in space, completely untouched. The Imperial fleet hung in stunned silence. Well, Captain Chen said cheerfully, that was nice. Very colorful. Did everyone enjoy that? I think the purple beams were my favorite. Actually, Dr. Park said thoughtfully, I was impressed by the coordination. Getting 200 ships to fire at exactly the same moment takes real skill. Primitive skill, but still skill. True, Chen agreed. You have to respect the effort even if the execution was a bit limited. She opened a channel to the Imperial fleet. Thanks for the show, everyone. That was really spectacular. Now shall we talk like civilized beings, or do you want to try something else? We've got all day. Admiral Zexathara stared at his instruments, watching readings that made no sense. According to every sensor on his ship, the human vessels should not exist. They defied every law of physics he knew. And they were still laughing. Fleet Commander, he said quietly to Takvar, I think we need to reconsider our approach. What are you suggesting, Admiral? Zexathara looked at the human ships, so small and fragile-looking, yet completely invulnerable to everything the Empire could throw at them. I'm suggesting, he said slowly, that maybe we should ask them how they do that. Captain Sarah Chen leaned back in her command chair and looked at the massive Imperial fleet arrayed before them. 200 of the most powerful warships in galactic history, all pointed at her 30 small vessels, all completely helpless. She almost felt sorry for them. Admiral Zexathara, she said into the comm system, her voice gentle and understanding. Fleet Commander Takvar, I can hear the confusion in your voices, and I think it's time we had an honest conversation. Would you like to know why your weapons can't touch us? There was a long pause before Zexathara responded. His voice was quiet, almost broken. Yes, please, we have thrown everything we have at you. Weapons that have conquered 1,000 worlds. And you just laugh. We laugh because we recognize what you're doing, Chen explained. It's like watching ourselves from a long, long time ago. Dr. Vasquez, would you like to explain it to them? Dr. Elena Vasquez stood up from her science station. As a xenobiologist and historian, she had spent years studying the development of different civilizations. This was exactly the kind of situation she had trained for. Admiral Commander, she began, her voice taking on the patient tone of a teacher. Your weapons operate on principles that humanity discovered and used extensively about 4,000 years ago. Particle beam weapons, fusion reactors, matter-antimatter reactions, all very impressive achievements for a species just beginning to understand the universe. Beginning to understand? Takvar's voice carried a note of offense. The Galactic Empire has mastered the sciences of war and conquest. We have built a civilization spanning thousands of star systems. Oh, absolutely, Vasquez agreed warmly. And it's a remarkable achievement. The engineering alone is incredible. But you're working within a very limited understanding of how reality actually functions. She paused to call up some data on her screen. Let me ask you something. How do you think the universe works? What do you believe matter and energy actually are? Admiral Zexathara found himself actually considering the question. Matter is the fundamental building blocks of reality. Energy is the force that acts upon matter. Together they form everything that exists. That's exactly what we used to think, Vasquez said with genuine warmth. It's a perfectly reasonable conclusion, based on the evidence available to early civilizations. But it's not quite right. Dr. James Park joined the conversation from his physics station. The thing is, matter and energy aren't really fundamental. They're more like shadows cast by something much deeper and more complex. Shadows? Fleet Commander Takvar asked. Imagine you're in a cave watching shadows on the wall, Park explained. You could spend centuries studying those shadows, learning their patterns, even using them to predict things. You might become very good at shadow manipulation. But then someone shows you that the shadows are cast by actual objects in the real world, and suddenly you realize you've been studying the wrong thing entirely. Captain Chen decided to take a more direct approach. Admiral, what you call matter and energy are just the most basic expressions of quantum probability fields interacting with dimensional substrate layers. Your weapons are trying to manipulate shadows while we work directly with the light that casts them. The Imperial communication channels fell silent for several long moments. I do not understand, Zexathara finally admitted. That's okay, Chen said kindly. Humanity didn't understand either for a very long time. We went through the same phase you're in now. We built huge fleets, conquered other species, thought our particle beam weapons made us masters of the galaxy. You conquered other species? Takvar asked, his voice uncertain. Oh yes, Dr. Vasquez confirmed. For about 2,000 years, humanity was exactly like your empire. We had massive warships, we enslaved entire civilizations. We thought bigger weapons meant we were more advanced. We called ourselves the Human Dominion, and believed we were destined to rule the galaxy. This revelation seemed to shake the Imperial commanders even more than the failed attacks had. What happened? Zexathara asked quietly. We grew up, Chen said simply. We eventually realized that trying to control the universe through force was like trying to hold water in your hands. The harder you squeeze, the more it slips away. Lieutenant Rodriguez looked up from his tactical station. Captain, I'm detecting several more Imperial fleets approaching the system. Looks like word has spread. How many ships? Chen asked. Over 1,000, ma'am, including some really big ones. I think they're bringing their entire military force. Chen sighed. Admiral, did you call for more reinforcements? Zexathara's voice was embarrassed. Yes, when our weapons failed, I requested all available ships, all of them? The entire Imperial Navy is coming to this system, Takvar confirmed. Every ship we have. The human crews across the fleet began laughing again, but this time it was gentler, more sympathetic. Oh, you poor things, someone said from one of the other human ships. You're about to embarrass yourselves in front of your entire civilization. Actually, Dr. Vasquez said thoughtfully, this might be perfect. Admiral, when your full fleet arrives, would you be willing to try something for us? What kind of something? Zexathara asked suspiciously. Attack us with everything you have. Every ship, every weapon, all at once. We want to show you something. Show us what? Why we stopped building warships, Chen said. Why we stopped conquering other species. Why we learned to laugh instead of fight. Dr. Park was studying his instruments with growing excitement. Sarah, If they're really bringing their entire military force, this could be the perfect demonstration. We could show them the fundamental difference between working with shadows and working with light. What do you mean? Shen asked. I mean, we could show them what happens when you try to apply force to something that exists in a higher dimensional framework. Not just deflect their attacks, but demonstrate why force itself is an obsolete concept. Chen's eyes lit up with understanding. Oh, that's brilliant. Admiral, when your fleets arrive, we're going to let you hit us with absolutely everything you have. Every weapon, every ship, all the force your entire civilization can bring to bear. And then? Zexthara asked. And then we're going to show you what real power looks like. Not the power to destroy, but the power to transcend destruction entirely. The communication channels fell quiet again, as the Imperial commanders tried to process what they were hearing. You are not afraid? Takvar finally asked. Afraid? Chen's voice was genuinely puzzled. Admiral, would you be afraid of a child throwing sand at you? That's not meant as an insult, she added quickly. Every species goes through this phase. You're exactly where you're supposed to be in your development. But fear, no, we're not afraid. Dr. Vasquez pulled up historical data on her screen. In fact, we're honored to be here. First contact with a species in their expansion phase is incredibly rare. Most civilizations either transcend this stage or destroy themselves. You've built something remarkable here, even if it's based on limited understanding. Limited understanding, Zexithera repeated bitterly. Hey. Chen's voice was firm, but kind. Don't take it personally. Humanity spent thousands of years thinking we knew everything too. The important thing is what you do next. You can keep trying to force the universe to obey you, or you can learn to work with it instead. And if we choose to learn, then we'll teach you, Chen said simply. Everything we know, everything we've learned. All the discoveries that took us from a warlike empire to this. But first you need to understand why your current approach won't work. Space around them began to shimmer as more Imperial ships arrived through jump gates. Massive dreadnoughts, planet-killer vessels, ships the size of small moons. The greatest military force in galactic history was assembling for battle, and 30 human ships waited peacefully in the center of it all, their crews preparing to teach the universe's most powerful empire why laughter was stronger than any weapon. Admiral, Chen said, as the last of the Imperial reinforcements took their positions. Are you ready to see what happens when an unstoppable force meets an unmovable object? Yeah, Zexithera replied, his voice filled with a mixture of dread and curiosity. Good. Because you're about to learn the most important lesson in the universe, that the only way to truly win is to stop fighting altogether. The assembled Imperial fleet was a sight that would have terrified any civilization in galactic history. Over 1,500 warships filled the space around Sol, representing every ship, every weapon, and every warrior the Galactic Empire could bring to bear. Planet-killer dreadnoughts floated next to moon-sized battle stations. Carrier vessels launched clouds of fighter craft that darkened the stars. The combined firepower could have reduced entire solar systems to cosmic dust. At the center of this overwhelming display of force, 30 small human ships waited patiently. Admiral Zexthera stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, looking at the tactical display that showed his entire civilization's military might. Every admiral, every fleet commander, every captain was waiting for his order. The fate of the Galactic Empire rested on what happened in the next few minutes. All ships report ready, his communications officer announced. Every weapon system in the fleet is charged and targeting the human vessels. Zexthera opened a channel to the human ships. Captain Chen, our entire fleet is assembled. If we fire everything at once, the energy release will be visible from the next galaxy. Are you certain you want us to proceed? Captain Sarah Chen's voice came back calm and cheerful. Absolutely certain, Admiral. We've been waiting for this moment for a long time. Dr. Park, are you ready to record everything? All sensors active, Dr. Park replied from his station. This is going to make the most incredible research paper. Dr. Vasquez was practically bouncing with excitement at her science station. Sarah, do you realize what we're about to witness? The exact moment when a civilization discovers that their entire understanding of reality is wrong. This is like watching someone learn that the Earth isn't flat. Actually, Chen said thoughtfully, it's more like watching someone learn that the Earth isn't the center of the universe. A complete paradigm shift. She opened the channel to the Imperial fleet again. Admiral, whenever you're ready, hit us with everything you've got. Zexithera took a deep breath. This was the moment that would define the future of the Galactic Empire. Either they would destroy these impossible humans and restore their sense of superiority, or he did not want to think about the alternative. "All ships," he announced across the fleet channels. "Target the human vessels. On my mark, fire everything. All weapons, maximum power, coordinate your timing. This is for the glory of the Empire." 1,500 warships turned their weapons toward 30 tiny human vessels. Mark. What happened next was beyond description. Every weapon in the Imperial arsenal fired simultaneously. Particle beams, quantum torpedoes, antimatter missiles, gravity bombs, reality disruptors, and weapons that existed only in the Empire's most classified research facilities. The space between the fleets became a storm of pure destruction, energy levels that registered off every instrument. The attack lasted for 30 seconds. When it finally ended, the human ships hung in space exactly where they had been before, completely untouched. But something had changed. Admiral Zexithera stared at his instruments in growing horror. The energy from their weapons had not disappeared. It had not been deflected or absorbed. It was still there, hanging in space around the human ships like a glowing cloud. "Captain Chen," he said slowly, "what did you do with our weapons?" "Oh, we didn't do anything," Chen replied. "We just let them exist in the same space as us. Dr. Park, would you like to explain what they're seeing?" Dr. Park's voice was filled with excitement. "Admiral, what you're looking at is your weapons fire existing in a quantum superposition state. Every particle beam, every torpedo, every unit of destructive energy you just fired is still there. It's just not interacting with our ships because we exist in a slightly different probability framework." "I do not understand," Zexithara said weakly. "Think of it this way," Dr. Vasquez added. "You just fired at us from inside a three-dimensional universe. But we're not entirely in that universe. We're existing in a space that includes your three dimensions but extends beyond them. Your weapons can't touch us any more than a drawing on paper can touch something in the real world." Fleet Commander Takvar's voice came through the comm, shaking with disbelief. "You are saying that our weapons exist in a lower dimension than your ships?" "Not lower," Chen corrected gently. "Just more limited. You're working with matter and energy as they appear to be. We're working with what matter and energy actually are underneath all the appearances." Captain Chen stood up from her command chair. It was time for the real demonstration. "Admiral, you've been very patient with us, so now we're going to show you something. Dr. Park, initiate a controlled dimensional fold. Folding space in 3 and 2, 1. Fold initiated." Reality twisted around the human ships in a way that made every Imperial sensor scream in protest. The space containing the 30 human vessels simply stepped sideways through dimensions that the Imperial instruments could not detect or measure. For just a moment, the human ships were gone. Then they reappeared, but now they were inside the defensive perimeter of the Imperial fleet. Not between the ships, but actually occupying the same space as several of the largest dreadnoughts, existing in the same location without touching. As you can see, Chen's voice came from inside the universe's end itself. When you understand how space and time actually work, concepts like distance and barriers become more like suggestions than laws. The crew of the universe's end stared in terror at their instruments, which showed a human ship existing in the exact same coordinates as their own vessel, yet causing no damage or interference. "Now," Chen continued, "watch what happens when we return your weapons to normal space." Dr. Park worked at his controls, releasing quantum superposition in 3, 2, 1. The cloud of destructive energy that had been hanging around the original human positions suddenly snapped back into normal reality. But the human ships were no longer there. The energy had nowhere to go. It went everywhere at once. The space where the human ships had been exploded in a fireworks display that lit up half the solar system. The energy from 1,500 warships firing at once had to go somewhere, and with no targets to hit, it simply expanded outward in all directions. The shockwave hit the Imperial fleet like a tsunami. Ships that had never known damage found their hulls cracking, weapon systems overloaded. Several smaller vessels were completely destroyed by the very energy they had fired moments before. The human ships reappeared in their original positions, completely unharmed. "And that," Chen said calmly, "is why we stopped building weapons. When you can control the fundamental structure of reality, weapons become not just useless, but dangerous to the people using them." The Imperial fleet hung in space, smoking and damaged by their own attack. Admiral Zexithera's voice was barely a whisper. How? The same way you learned to use fire, Chen replied. The same way you learned to split atoms. The same way you learned to travel between stars. Step by step, discovery by discovery, until you understand how things really work instead of how they appear to work. Dr. Vasquez called up historical data on her screen. Admiral, your civilization is approximately 4,000 years away from these discoveries if you follow the normal development path. But that doesn't have to be the case. What do you mean? We can teach you, Chen said simply. Everything we know, everything we've learned. The mathematics of dimensional manipulation, the physics of quantum probability control, the technology that lets you step outside the normal rules of space and time. Why? Takvar's voice was full of suspicion. Why would you help us? We came here to conquer you. Because that's what we do, Chen replied. We find species that are ready to grow beyond their current limitations, and we help them take the next step. It's not about conquest or control. It's about lifting everyone up together. But we attacked you. We tried to destroy you. Of course you did. That's exactly what we would have done in your position. What we did do, actually, when we were at your level of development. The only difference is that no one was there to teach us. We had to figure it out on our own, and it took thousands of years. Dr. Park looked up from his instruments. The beautiful thing is you're already closer than you think. Your engineering is excellent. Your mathematics are sound. You just need to expand your understanding of what's possible. Admiral Zexathara stared at the human ships that had just demonstrated technology beyond his wildest imagination. Technology that made his entire civilization look like children playing with toys. You would really teach us these things? Even after we tried to destroy you? Especially because you tried to destroy us, Chen said warmly. It shows you have the courage to face the unknown. That's exactly the quality you need to make the leap to the next level of existence. She paused, then continued more seriously. But Admiral, you need to understand something. This technology, this understanding, it comes with responsibility. You can't use it for conquest or domination. Once you understand how reality really works, the idea of forcing others to obey you becomes not just wrong, but literally impossible. Impossible how? Because when you can control the fundamental forces of existence, you realize that everything is connected. Hurting others is like hurting yourself. Controlling others is like trying to control your own thoughts. It makes no sense.